Today we're going to be taking a look at the Dynasty Fantasy Football trade market. We're going to be looking at some players, their buy, sell, hold values on the trade market, what we can do with them. We're going to try and time the market, how they're being evaluated by other fantasy gamers, and see what we want to do with these players. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're always looking at those edge lines to help you make those deals, trying to find those deals for you to make. On top of that, we're looking at the rookie drafts pretty hard, looking at those prospects. Click that button, stop missing out. But our first player today, and the theme is second year running backs, because last week was second year wide receivers, technically the rookies, but we got a new batch of rookies obviously coming in sooner than later for 2025. The first running back here being valued, the highest valued one, Bucky Irvin right now. Per the market, RB7, let's keep trade cut. You look at ADP, very similar. If you want to be tit for tat with numbers, go ahead. But honestly, we had a good season for Bucky Irvin. Finished the season strong. Only one down week from week 12 to week 18. Scoring good, double digits most of the time. 14.5 points per game. But on top of that, multiple RB1 weeks, multiple RB2 weeks, and only like 4 or 5 games where really he did not hit RB2 status. And only a few games there where he did not hit double-digit PPR fantasy points. And that's what I want to look at when I look at the numbers here and extrapolating the scoring data. The average, of course, what he ranked at, but also from game to game. Where are you ranking from game to game, week to week? What those numbers are looking like. Are you averaging RB1 status? Or are you hitting RB2 a lot and just jumping in to the average by the end of the season? This guy's fluid. He's got some upside and he's very consistent. And we're liking that, and we're getting a lot of opportunities, even sharing the backfield. And this is a good team for a running back like this because they'll use 2 running backs at the same time. Bucky Irvin going into year 2 is a hard running back when you think about this stacked draft class getting zapped. They got talent on the roster. If anything, Sean Tucker having that one good game helped them because now they're looking at their depth chart being like, we got some dudes here. We can focus on other positions. Maybe there's going to be some values in this year's draft, but Bucky Irvin's pretty safe. He's pretty damn safe. Looking at opportunities here, 34th among running backs, but he's sharing the backfield, but 15th among running backs in targets, getting volume in the passing game, and we're getting a 32.6% route participation rate, and we're running about 12 routes per game. Pretty good for a running back, especially when you're out there in a part-time role pretty much. Full-time / part-time, probably part-time enough where you can push for some benefits if this was a real job, but we are taking it in the back end of the season. True yards per carry, 6th among running backs. Yards per touch, 5th. Juke rate, 3rd. Evaded tackles, 5th. Explosive rating, 6th. Breakaway run, 7. We're up there among running backs. We're very efficient with the ball in our hands. We got that gusto to our game. Yards created per touch, 2nd among running backs. 4th yards created overall. Very efficient running back with a lot of upside, whether it's catching the ball out of the backfield or between the tackles. You saw this on the tape. He is a very slippery runner, very efficient, looking good. We saw this back at Oregon. 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. Those touchdowns could come up even too. We could see an increase in that, an increase in workload overall. We don't see that dipping too much. The only thing that could really hurt him is injury, and that could happen to any running back. That being said, look at the adjacent values. Do you take him or T-Mac? Him or like the 102, 103, 104, and 2 QB, 1 QB, whatever it is? Him in that T-Mac area. Are you taking him or that? Are you taking him or Breece Hall? Him or Kyren Williams long term? That's probably the better question. Bucky Irvin or Kyren Williams? Who would you take long term? Bucky Irvin or James Cook? I want to know about that in the comments below. When you think about these guys in 1-for-1 trade scenarios, it's just a listing of guys close in value, but it's not trade value, so you're going to have to get creative with some of these players. Some of you guys are going to have to give up a pick or ask for more picks or whatnot, but it's a baseline overall tool to look at. But Tyrone Tracy, the RB2 right now, and Dynasty speculatory value here, is going into his second season as the main running back for the New York Giants. The question with that, can they get a quarterback? Are they going to be able to move the football? That impacted some of his games last year, but we were getting volume, we were getting opportunities. The second question is, they might catch another running back on the cheap. They may do that in this year's draft. The sunk cost isn't really there to prevent them from spending like a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick on a running back. I believe 6th, 7th round picks in this year's running back class is probably going to be valued as like a 4th rounder in any other class. Something to keep a lookout for. But still, I don't see him getting nuked by this draft class either. I look for him going into year 2 being the guy. Might have some added competition. If I was this team struggling to find a quarterback, I'd make sure I'm loaded at the running back spot when there's running backs to draw from that well from, and they're right there, especially at value in certain spots of the draft for the taking on the cheap. Tyrone Tracy, though, lots of upside. I don't see anybody coming in zapping that job. RB23 in value. So the market's saying, like, hey, these guys don't have a quarterback. Sunk cost isn't invested in him. Maybe long-term it might get a little sketchy. What we saw last year was a damn good running back prospect. 23rd among running backs in opportunity share, 60.2%. Yards per route run. In the receiving game, routes ran, he's averaging 13.2 routes per game. 12th among running backs. But he was sharing the role a little bit with Singletary in the beginning. Yards per route ran, 1.27, 26th among running backs. Part of that's the offense too. Something to throw in there. True yards per carry, 4.1, 33rd among running backs. Yards created per touch, 24th among running backs with 3.59. The thing about this is one of the few running backs in the National Football League that you know is going to have the job. The coaching staff loves him. He's going to be getting a lot of opportunities. And if you're looking at running back as a redraft position where you're just valuing them for the short term, might be something to look at. If you're a player who looks at later round picks as players who teams invested little capital in that could deal off any moment, any time, maybe you look to sell off. The market is kind of thinking that way a little bit with the little dip here in the off season in February. The market's kind of saying that a little bit. I think most people are going to hold tight. I think his value is going to pop back up when we get in August. This is what we're looking at here. How this chart should look like in the future. Market sentiment. I look for it to pop back up a little bit once we get closer to August. Whether or not they spend a late round pick or not on a running back to add depth, to add talent to this team. If they do, I think there'll be some short-term speculation. You might see a little dip there, but I look for Tyrone Tracy to be the guy going into 25, and I look for that chart to pop back up around August once people get a little bit more redrafty. Tyrone Tracy's got a lot of talent. He's very explosive. Former wide receiver, can catch the ball out of the backfield. It's going to lend you some good points in PPR, and we're at a good value. We're at a good value. There are some good money ball plays at wide receiver in his range when you're looking at one-for-one standards, but you're going to have to get creative, like I said earlier, if you're trying to make a trade for some of the other running backs, some of the other players. Could be a good chip as a throw-in for a bigger deal, like a huge deal, something to look at. You got him, another running back, and a pick, and you're trying to get a big boy deal done, trying to pay up for one of those studs. Maybe something like that. Maybe that could happen because you're getting that RB2 value coming on the back end. You're also looking at Devin Singletary's contract. That might prevent them from bringing in another running back because we got a potential out after 2025. That might slow down that process. That might be the hold-on effect for the Giants, allowing them to get other running backs. But again, talent might be there for them at the cheap, just like any other team on the back end. I'm not worried about Tyrone Tracy. I think Devin Singletary will be a good meat shield from preventing them to try and get that RB2 to have a tandem to copycat other teams. I think Tyrone Tracy here is going to go into 2025. This is going to be his year to prove himself. The quarterback position needs to get right. They need to get better on offense overall. You might catch volatility due to that. But again, we're going into 2025 pretty strong when it comes to opportunity standpoint. Trey Benson, funny running back prospect here. At Florida State, back-to-back 900-yard seasons. The market liked him after the NFL draft, after the combine, really. Ran out of 4.3s with good size, just athleticism. James Conner never got hurt. I mean, he did I mean, he did, but he held it down all season. James Conner was a monster last year. Maybe that's the better way to say it. James Conner was a monster. He only came out a little bit. He came out one time, and it was to get his ankle taped up. It was a timeshare between Trey Benson and Amari Demercado. Later in the season, Conner got banged up, but Amari Demercado, I believe, was also banged up. That's something to pay attention to. So if Conner goes down, they may try to make it a timeshare. However, we got another off season here, so Trey Benson could close the gap on that RB2 role. I imagine he will. He has the talent to do so. They draft him to do so, but he's got to prove that. He's very electric on the field. We saw that 2 double-digit weeks, even in a timeshare, even with him playing behind James Conner, 2 double-digit weeks. That gives you a notion that we have potential. We're just not dog shit in the National Football League. We're not sitting there because we suck. James Conner was a monster. The market's not really realizing that. I don't think the market was watching or paying attention week to week to week to week to week. That's why you play DFS and redraft. It really helps you with the lineup setting, the waiver wire, and knowing what was trending on the waiver wire during those moments in the middle of the season will help you find arbitrages when it comes to player values, because Trey Benson was a hot waiver wire get all season long as a stash play, and he held on to that. So there was value to him in season no matter what. He's going to hold that. James Conner, just like any other running back in the back end of their career, ain't going to be there forever. It ain't going to hold up forever like he was. The opportunity shares, the metrics here is hard to evaluate considering it was a limited touch scenario. We were only seeing 19% opportunity share every game. Not many touches per game, too. So we're only getting 4.8 carries a game. Looking at this, James Conner was a man with 236 rushing attempts, over 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He was holding it off, and he had a vice grip on this backfield. Look at what I said about Amari Demercado. Amari Demercado in 13 games, 24 carries, 223 yards, versus Trey Benson, 63 carries, 291 yards. Demercado is also very explosive. Pay attention to this backfield and what they do with it over the offseason. I think Trey Benson's going to be the RB2. I think everybody's really thinking about that. But again, thinking outside the box, as you should always be on the lookout for that. Adjacent players, he's pretty cheap. If you want to make that investment, I think the time to get him and when he's most liquid is when people are really starting to get fluid with these rookies, which might be now for your league, or maybe during your rookie draft. James Conner's not going to be there forever. They got to out on him in 2025, but they may mess around with the contract and allow him to be there a little bit longer. But we're not a young buck anymore. We're going to be 30 years old soon. He's not going to be there forever, and they got to make some moves. And Trey Benson is the move they're hoping to make here because they already made the investments. And the thing about this running back class, they're not primed to make a position for it, kind of like the Giants because they got Tyron Tracy, but values come in those later rounds, and there's going to be talent there. I'm going to say somebody's going to slip. There's going to be a few backs that slip because it's too deep with talent, and they're going to be day 3, and somebody's going to pick up a running back who already has a starter, and it's going to scratch your head. I don't forecast that for any team, but I forecast that happen to a team or two. Trey Benson here, upside for days. 4.3 speed. An offense where you got Kyler Murray running around with his head cut off, slinging the rock around. There's some games where the game script goes off, and there's some games where the game scripts are nuked. And you want to look at that from a micro perspective when you're playing Dynasty, because really you want to try to win, and you really want to look at how these games could be ran. We can definitely say that. There's a lot of upside here. For the talent, for what you can get long term, you got some cheap upside here. And honestly, the sunk cost isn't going to kill you if you bust. Jonathan Brooks, the market is dumping him right now. Another ACL injury. There's rumors or news that he may not be playing in 2025. Probably not. And if he does, it's late. It's probably going to be around this time. He's probably not playing. Jonathan Brooks, you got to hold on to him. If you got an IR spot and your IR spots are deep, you're probably holding him there through 2025. So you're got a clear spot to add somebody else if you got him. Upside's there. Honestly, when you peel back and look at his rookie profile, we got 1 year of production and then an ACL injury and another ACL injury. The odds are stacked against him. He's athletic. He's very twitched up when he runs the ball. You may have to wait a long time to cash in on this, the odds are very stacked against him. He's second-round draft capital, still young, still can get over this. I expect him to be an afterthought once we get into the season. I think when we get into the season, he'll be an afterthought, and he'll be even cheaper and more liquid on the cheap, too. Because right now, I'm not going to give him away. I know I can put him on IR once the season starts, more than likely. IR, pop, or however your league does it. I'm not going to give him away. Not right now. But if I have him, and I need a wide receiver, too. I need another running back. I got to get through this week. I'm trying to win a championship. I got him on my... So you might be able to catch a deal. You might be able to catch a deal. That's going to change things. That's what I'm looking at when I look at this. I don't look at this and be like, oh, that's the value. No, I kind of think about scenarios here and how things could play out. We got a name here. We got a guy with some juice, a guy that could pop up. And then Chuba Hubbard got that contract. Chuba Hubbard's going to be there. But I'm expecting them to want to rock 2 running backs anyways. They kind of let us know that in training camp leading up into the season, how they were making a competition between him and Hubbard, Sanders and Hubbard, and that we could be seeing a mixed role. It's just Sanders sucks, and they realized that. New coaching staff, they did not know how bad Sanders sucks and how inefficient he is on the field. He did have some games where he ran 20-plus routes with Hubbard back there healthy. That's the thing about that, and that's hoping that would transfer to Jonathan Brooks. Chuba Hubbard's the man. I think he's underrated in Dynasty, and I need to do one of these for him. But he's the man. He's underrated when you look at the values, especially at ADP. And his ADP is very similar to these values here. 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Jonathan Brooks, in 2 years, coming back, ramping up. The market's going to increase for him. Definitely see that. He's going to be very cheap once we start the season. He's going to be very cheap if you're willing to make that move. And I imagine he's going to be cheaper than a lot of these players. I imagine the market's going to forget about him. He's going to be an afterthought. Those that have him on IR or whatever, they might vice grip him a little bit. But once the injuries start to hit, bye weeks start to hit, you may be able to make a move. Blake Corum is taking a massive market dump. Blake Corum is nosediving right now. That is not a good look for rookies. That is not a good look for rookie running backs at all. Rookie wide receivers for sure. That is not a good look when you see that. We're down to RB47. And we've been dropping. We've been dropping hard. Blake Corum did not see the field. Kyren Williams is never going to leave the field until he gets injured. Obviously, Blake Corum is great for anybody that has Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams gets a lot of touches. A lot of touches. Not just touches, but snaps. Pass blocking opportunities. Blake Corum's taking a dump right now in the market, and he's cheap. He's cheap. So if you liked what you saw at Michigan, if you liked what you saw on the field, if you're not worried about Kyren Williams or you got Kyren Williams, maybe now's the time as we're infusing these rookie running backs, because we're looking at this. You cannot really go after his efficiency ratings. We have not touched the ball enough. We have not, but they're pretty low. They're not looking good. 207 yards, 58 rushing attempts, 3.6 yards per carry. Not the most twitched up running back. Not the most explosive running back, but you make the case Kyren Williams is definitely not. Definitely not. He is a lunch pail grinder who can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. He's not a receiving weapon, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's good in pass protection. He's a guy that's developing, and Kyren Williams is not leaving the field. He's a coach's pet. He's a coach's pet. He's probably getting another contract. He's probably going to be there for his whole career, at least Sean McVay's, unless they're going to use him, abuse him, and ship him out. Unless that happens, and injuries will have to happen for that to occur, because they love him. They love him. They wanted him on kick returns and punt returns and everything else going into the season. The sky fell for that, but we knew the reason why is because they love him. They love him so much. Blake Corum not loved as much yet. Blake Corum's sitting there waiting on the wings for his opportunity. I think if something does happen to Kyren Williams, you're just going to see that chart just shoot back up to a certain point. And if you're wanting to sell after that certain point, you're going to catch an ROI just because of the injury. You're just going to, but naturally, it's so low right now. RB50 range, it's going to go up to like, RB30s, mid-30s, 30, late 20s, depending on what the running back landscape's looking at in season. Maybe you just want to play the market on that. Maybe you can do that. But I imagine whoever has Blake Corum has them diamond fist right now. so he's not going to be super liquid. Overall, Rashad White, Aaron Jones, Ray Davis, speculative older running backs, speculative young running backs in that area. That's something to look at there. Young players that are volatile like Quentin Johnston, that is where he's being valued. So if you want that for the short term to see if you can get some scratch on the end, if Kyren Williams gets hurt, that is something to look at. That's pretty cheap. Kyren Williams is getting a lot of touches. Well, RB2 in opportunities, one of the top running backs in snaps, led all running backs in pass blocking snaps last year. One of the top running backs in routes ran. That could happen. That's a lot of work. And when you're getting that many touches, up the gut, pass blocking, all that on your body, you do not know if that's going to affect you long term. But those are the running backs we're looking at this week. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.